This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Welcome to episode 175 of the CineSnob Podcast. I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
And I'm Jocelyn and
Jerrod. We are going to open the show for, seems like the third or fourth week in a row, talking about Tenet.
Yeah.
Which last week we mentioned was pulled from the calendar. Mm-hmm. This week, it's was announced by Warner Brothers.
It's back, baby.
It's back. It's opening internationally first because the United States is a shit show. And that means Europe and other places that have handled the COVID-19 pandemic better than the United States. We'll get to see Tenet before people in the United States. And there's like a tentative early August release for Tenet. I guess it is August already, right? Yeah.
You mean tentative?
Oh, good one, Cody. Again, this should be in theaters relatively soon. I think Cinemark actually reopened here in Austin. Y'all have what, 2 Cinemarks in San Antonio?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, so will either of you go see Tenet if
well,
it hits theaters?
Here's the funny thing is that last week I was like, okay, Warner Brothers was mature. They did the right thing. They took it off the schedule. It's delayed indefinitely. And then what it really means is just another 2 weeks, which is basically what's happening, which is it's coming out on Labor Day weekend. So really, honestly, it was a move disguised as another move. I will not be going, no.
Wait, is it Labor Day weekend? I thought it was early August. I didn't realize it was that far down.
No, because it was supposed to be August 17th, and then they pushed it to Labor Day weekend.
You're right. Yeah, wow. Jocelyn.
well, Regal's opening August 21st, right? All their theaters?
Something like that, but they're going to show, because like China is showing Christopher Nolan movies and is making like a shit ton of money doing it.
So you can go see like Iron Man or whatever. That's what I saw at the Cinemark here was like Iron Man and Back to the Future.
That's what Santikos has been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Regal's doing all the precautionary things about, I think they're putting like two seats in between each person, and you have to buy food online on an app. But August 21st is not that far away, and they're planning to reopen. I don't know if it's like a select amount of theaters, but...
God, we've been talking about this for months now. All of this stuff is just keeps getting pushed back. But it looks like Tenet is actually opening overseas and not here in the United States. So
I just still can't believe that it's happening. I mean, I still cannot believe that Warner Brothers is willing to potentially punt on hundreds of millions of dollars just to get this thing in theaters right now. It's crazy to me because, I don't want to relitigate this for the 1,000th time on this show, but, we talked about how easy it would be to just say it's indefinite and then, 2 to 3 weeks after things are, calm or have, resolved a little bit, just make it still be the first big movie in theaters. Like it doesn't have to come out right now, but they're insistent, and they're probably going to lose a lot of money domestically as a result.
A funny story. I guess it's sort of funny. We went to Dairy Queen yesterday, and they have.
Good.
Fuck you, Cody.
Good start.
Hilarious.
We went, but they have Wonder Woman 84 cups, like in all their Frosty Blizzards. Like how did they not stop that marketing train this far out in advance? Because it's just like, oh, hey, here's a movie that who knows when it's opening.
Right. It's like Happy Meal toys with Tenet stars.
I haven't seen anything. I haven't been to McDonald's in a while. I wonder what kind of Happy Meals they're throwing out there right now, since you can't watch anything.
Just Scooby-Doo.
The last what was the last Christopher Nolan movie? The
Dunkirk?
World War II. Dunkirk. Carl's Jr. had promotional Dunkirk cups, and I have it posted on my Facebook timeline somewhere, which seems like a very weird tie-in. So, Cody, you wanted to talk about something else. As theaters reopen, AMC has made a deal with Universal that you have some issues with. Tell us about that.
Well,
Cody.
I don't know that I have issues with it as much as I don't really understand how it's going to work on a large scale. So basically what it means is that AMC and Universal created a pact. So if you remember previously, Universal's been one of the more aggressive releasers of movies on VOD during the pandemic, and essentially Universal said, we're going to consider this in future years or future releases. And what that ended up turning into is the movie theaters saying, specifically AMC saying, well, then we're not going to show any Universal movies. Yeah. So AMC and Universal struck a deal where they are shrinking the theatrical window from, I believe, 90 days to what is now 17 days, which means that a movie can open in theaters and then 17 days later come out on VOD. However, that's just for AMC. So AMC is getting a cut of the VOD money when that happens. So it's essentially a studio and a theater chain like having a deal together. And right. So of course Cinemark is pissed off at this because Cinemark gains nothing from this. They don't get any money from the VOD, and also when the movie moves to VOD, that's going to cut into their theatrical money, for movies. And so, I've been getting into discussions with some other critic people locally this week, and they seem to think it's a big tide-turning thing. But for me, I don't understand what kind of movie fits this bill. Because if let's say Universal has, Fast and the Furious 11 or whatever the hell comes out, and it's banking and making serious money even 3 weeks into it, they're not going to punt to VOD when they're still making money in the theaters. Right. And then also at the same time, if you have a movie that's failing in theaters, it's not like VOD sales are just going to skyrocket after a movie's not doing well in the theaters. So I don't really understand the gain here from the perspective of the theater chains, really, because does this mean that every major studio then makes an exclusive pact with a theater chain and then they're all angry at each other? I don't really get it, because again, that 17-day theatrical window is not for all movies. It is for Universal movies exclusively. So it's just weird.
Yeah, I feel like some studio did this with Blockbuster Video years ago.
Oh, no.
That they got to have their DVDs in there like for rent. This is how long ago it was. A DVD for rent in some certain window before it went to
Redbox did this.
Yeah, too. I think they like traded blows with that too.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you see on VOD? So, Jocelyn, for example, you wouldn't go see something. Would you go see something like 17 days after it was released, or would you wait for VOD?
No, I don't think I would. I think I would just simply wait for it to go to VOD. I'm not the, it's opening day and I have to go and see this. Unless it's one of my favorite directors, so maybe I'm just, completely going against what I just said. But if it was something that I really, really wanted to see, I might, yeah.
Though it does seem to me, and I don't know how many of you, if either of you have gone to see something so far after release. I know Cody and I don't typically, because we see the screeners or right. See the press screenings. But by the time it gets to a couple weeks out, like it's in the shittiest theater at the movie theater, and it's on the smallest screen and maybe not, but twice a day at weird times. So
I kind of wait for them to go through the whole process of like whether this was just hype or whether, this was an actual movie. I think I saw 1917 like 2 months after it was released. At a theater? And it was wow. Like, it's much, there's like 5 people there. It's like a Sunday matinee kind of a thing where it's a little more low key. It feels like you're in your living room, except it's a huge screen. So I'm not the best person to, I'm not the best person to probably talk about that.
One thing is that the 17-day window is optional, right? So the AMC can say, no, we're not gonna have you go to VOD quite yet. So for example, the example that our friend James was using in a conversation, I'm going to call him out because he doesn't watch this, was that, if Wonder Woman after 17 days kicks it to VOD and then suddenly you have, a huge VOD release for Wonder Woman 17 days after it comes out in theaters. Well, if you look in week 3 of Wonder Woman, it made like $28 million. So AMC is not going to kick it out of theaters when it's making $28 million. But also at the same time, again, how pissed are other theater chains going to be where now VOD is, they're fighting VOD for screen time, basically. And like you said, even for maybe smaller run theaters or second run theaters, becomes a thing of the past ultimately, and second run theaters really take a hit if they're even making a lot of money, which I think they're making enough to operate. But
Right.
yeah, I just don't see how this is scalable when it's just like one theater and one studio in bed with each other.
This is really a change of pace for you, Cody, because you're normally a very big advocate for this VOD stuff.
If it was something that was like the theatrical window changed period to 17 days across all movies, I'm all for it. But the pact between studio and theater chain is something I can't wrap my head around exactly.
I get that. I mean, I think that it'll probably end up being, something smaller, maybe a horror movie or something that has only legs for a couple weeks, and then it.
I think that would be a perfect format for those types of movies, and sort of the more indie ones that aren't getting a lot of people going into the theater. It's like, how long should they be in a theater for? I think maybe just a couple weeks is perfect for those kinds of movies.
But does it also kill the legs of an indie movie where it might take a couple weeks because there are movies that like
Sure.
slowly and steadily build an audience, or they'll maintain a decent audience for a couple months. So at the end of the day, it all adds up to being like $100 million box office gross. And I don't know that if people just say, oh well, I'll just wait 17 days for this small budget movie or this indie movie to just come to VOD, does that even help AMC? I mean, it's just a weird thing.
And it kind of cuts down on those small movies that rely on word of mouth when people start, telling their friends, going and seeing that. So I can see that too. That is a little unfortunate because it would eliminate those movies.
But then maybe is it going to be a premium VOD price like a $19.99 or $14.99?
I think so.
So then it might be cheaper to actually head to a theater at that point. If it's just a small horror movie you're not taking the whole family to or whatever, then I don't know. I don't understand the pact, but it doesn't seem to be.
My parents were complaining about spending, what was it, like $12 on Greyhound last night. They were, and it's funny because they would, throw down like at least $50 at the Bijou for a dinner and a movie, but like $12 to see Greyhound at home. They're like, I don't know.
Oh, it's the same with like ordering food now. It's like we have a place here called P. Terry's. It's a burger stand.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and then it's pretty cheap in general, but then like to have it delivered through Favor, it costs like $6. So you're adding a third of the total to have it delivered to your house, which is, I think, probably the thing that maybe figures into the math here on this. Once everyone's comfortable with going out again, like, do I want to pay $14.99 to watch Greyhound, or can I pay $7.99 for the matinee,
right?
And watch a bunch of Coca-Cola commercials and all that other crap. So,
Yep. Speaking of Blockbuster, I had a friend who went to the last one in Portland. Have y'all seen that?
Oh yeah, I followed on Instagram.
I couldn't believe it. He was like live streaming it, and I was like, "What is happening? Like, what year are we?" It was super cool.
Did you ever work at a Blockbuster?
No, I did not. I worked at Dobie in Austin, the Dobie Mall.
Oh yeah.
But I was an RA there, but I got free rentals at Vulcan Video. Oh my God, that was bad.
We just they just shut the last one down. I bought a couple of their DVD shelves for our collection when I can finally put them
R.I.P. That was super sad.
Yeah, I used to work at the Albertsons video rental department, and it was so. I watched so many movies that way, like just that I was like, whatever. We talked about this on our other show. I watched Escape from L.A., having not seen Escape from New York. Just all this stuff that, like, who cares? But yeah, I had a bunch of friends.
Which Albertsons?
on Babcock and Prue.
Okay, that would have been weird. If I
What?
had rented from you.
Which was
Like
your
Adventures
Albertsons?
in Babysitting or whatever. It was on Tezel.
Oh, I had friends that worked there, so you may have rented from my friends. So
That's crazy. Oh man.
Jerrod, I'm a little upset that you haven't commented on my hat.
Oh, I forgot too.
I did before the show started, but yes, Cody has another hat, a rather modern version compared to the last few. So Project Almanac, which was
AKA the most derivative movie I've ever seen in my life.
A time travel movie, young adult time travel. Was that it?
Yeah.
Not terrible, but like a found footage thing. I believe the director of that went on to direct the Ninja Turtles sequel, if I'm not mistaken.
Dean Israelite. He directed Power Rangers.
Oh, Power Rangers. That was it. That was terrible. Sorry. I knew it was something like that. Yeah, that was an okay movie, if I remember all right. Project Almanac. I think it was a January release.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a cast of like unknown kids, basically teenagers or whatever 20-year-olds that they play.
that play teenagers?
Yeah. And then, of course, it was found footage, which makes no sense. But
Right.
anyway, I think it actually had the weird, it tried to be a little more accurate with time travel.
Yeah.
And then it accounted for the rotation of the Earth and things like that. It was, anyway.
This is my second to last hat that I have right now.
Oh, shit.
I will probably be reloading here soon, just to kind of keep it fresh. But I did save a good one for my final one before I start rotating.
I have a really boring Jason Bourne one somewhere. If I knew where it was, I'd mail it to you today. But it's like black, totally black on the front, and it says Jason Bourne on the side. Kind of appropriate for that piece of shit movie. Just boring and stupid. So. Anything else before we move on?
No, I just wanted my hat notice. That's all.
Okay, well, good, Cody. Let's go. Let's go ahead and move on to reviews.
Here are this week's reviews.
First up, we have She Dies Tomorrow.
Hi. How's the new house?
Good. Can you come over?
I can't. Are you okay?
I am going to die tomorrow.
What is going on?
There is no tomorrow for me.
All right, listen, Amy, I'm really freaking out right now. I feel like you put this idea of dying in my head. Can you just call me back?
So this is the rare neon release these days that isn't going straight to Hulu. That's been the case with the past few releases. This is actually in theaters for now and coming to VOD later this upcoming week. Cody, tell us about She Dies Tomorrow and what you thought of it.
Well, I can tell you the synopsis of the movie, and then you will have seen the movie, which is that there is a woman who is convinced in some way that she is going to die tomorrow, and then she tells someone, and then they think they're going to die tomorrow, and then that's the movie. Look, this is a movie that has a lot of buzz behind it. So this was supposed to premiere at South by Southwest this year. A running thing that we'll see, I think, a lot over the next few weeks of South by Southwest movies that never quite got to come out. And I wish that I was exaggerating when I said that was the extent of the movie, but it kind of is. You know, the scenes are repetitive, and where it really is like this idea that you're going to die tomorrow becomes contagious, and it's a bunch of people going, "Oh, you're crazy! What's wrong with you?" And then 10 seconds later, they also believe they're going to die tomorrow, and it just repeats 5 or 6 times. Now, look, the movie is also very clearly about existential dread, and that is the underlying theme behind everything. And at the end of the day, the movie sort of makes a message of, you know, it's okay to not be okay, but boy, does it take a journey to get there. The movie is like 84 minutes long. It's real short, And I remember watching and being like 15 minutes in and not knowing what the fuck was happening. And look, if again, this comes up a lot, and I don't. It's not necessarily that a movie can't be slow paced, but if you are 15 minutes into an 84-minute movie and it's not clear what's going on, it's so goddamn frustrating. Just like have something of substance happen. Like you don't have a lot of time here. Let's go. Let's get it going.
We're dying tomorrow.
Yeah. And look, I just think it's a really difficult movie to crack. I think that the performances are fine, and it's got a lot of interesting, like weird, random cameos in it.
Like Michelle Rodriguez.
Yeah, for like 5 whole minutes.
Chris Messina. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wish that I felt anything from it, but I kind of didn't. Now, is it kind of visually interesting? Yeah, I think it is. Is it like hypnotic in a weird way? Yeah, I think it is oddly hypnotic and visually interesting, and it plays with color and sound and things like that. But to me, there's just nothing there. I just could not find anything to grasp onto, because I think its existentialism is so vague that whatever is happening seems to be unspoken or metaphoric in a way that like the idea of it passing on to other people. It's again, it's so repetitive, man. It's just the same thing over and over again. And so again, for me, this movie is a synopsis more than it is a film. It's an idea. It's a log line repeated over and over again, and I just don't think that it has anything that ties it all together.
Jocelyn, what about you?
So I guess I can live in that world of I don't know what's happening in a movie for the first 15 minutes. Maybe I'm more patient than Cody, but I think that, if I don't know what's happening by the end of the movie, then maybe that'll be something that I complain about. But if I don't know what's happening immediately, then honestly, I'm a little more intrigued. That's not to say that's exactly what happened here, because I do believe the beginning is rather slow. If they had tightened it up a little bit, I think it would have moved the movie along a lot better. And I could have enjoyed, not knowing what was happening a little more. But I really enjoyed kind of this exploration of, like what's happening and just watching these characters kind of navigate it and seeing how they react to it and the other people around them react to it. The acting was great too. And visually, like Cody said, it was also not bad. So all in all, I wasn't, on the edge of my seat, but I was happy to kind of watch it go through whatever it was going through.
Okay, so I'm going to agree with both of you in certain respects. Like, I'm not disinterested when it comes to, if I don't know what's happening in the first 15 minutes and I can't figure it out. However, I will agree with Cody that this thing is just repetitive and really obtuse. It's really hard to crack. I've seen a lot of comparisons, and I don't know if you've read any reviews of this. I was reading afterward. A lot of people are kind of likening it to the moment that we're in, where there's just this sort of existential dread that, like Cody said, like it's okay to not be okay. And I get that, but I don't know that the movie really sells that message as well as it should, because there's obviously something happening, a supernatural thing or something that's causing this feeling to be contagious. And while it's not a horror movie by any means, it does have like kind of horrific imagery, I guess. There's a lot of like microscopic cell stuff happening and just sort of disorienting things like that. So I don't know that it really is as what am I trying to say? Like, it's not as of our times as I think that people like to see it as. And obviously it was made before we were in a global crisis of this pandemic, but I just don't feel like it ever really sells that point home, sells it enough to drive it home. as being something that's about a real existential dread as opposed to something that may be affecting these people.
Yeah, and I think the existential dread that it has is very it's very non-specific, and it's sort of unclear at times, and I think and also showing our main character in moments outside of like going to flashbacks and things like that. I don't think that it helps inform the character in any way. I don't really think that it has a lot of purpose in that sense. And I just found myself kind of asking myself, what is the point of all of this, and why does it have to be so like you said? Why does it have to be so obtuse? Why does it have to? Because again, it's not that I don't understand what's going on after 15 minutes. It's that nothing happens in the first 15 minutes.
Right.
Nothing happens of substance.
Yeah, it's super slow.
Yeah, and so I'm okay with like not being able to figure out the entire movie, but again, 84 minutes, you're 15 minutes in and nothing has happened. You can't ignore. I mean, if you walk into a movie knowing the runtime, you can't ignore the fact that the movie's just melting away and you're still wondering when something's going to happen. So, I think that it's certainly stylish, and I think it's not a poorly made movie, but I really did not have a good time with this.
It's got that disease where it doesn't. It thinks it's imagery and whatever kind of metaphorical sense it's trying to make is enough, and it doesn't explain enough in the screenplay.
That was my main complaint. I wish it had at least explained the origin of this thing that's being passed around, or
right, or at
tried
least like
to.
or at least, I mean, it doesn't have to spell everything out, but at
Right.
least some sort of insight as to what's happening.
Yeah.
Other than just this existential dread is, I mean, because the main character is said to be like a recovering alcoholic and things like that seem to play into this, but don't really tend to go anywhere. Okay, grades, Cody.
Yeah, I can't in good conscience recommend this. I was I had written down in my notes C-, but I think that might be a bit too harsh, so I'm gonna go with C.
C. Okay, hold on. Oh, my mouse is not working.
Oh, Jerrod.
I can't.
Here, I'll speak over Cody's picture.
Hold on. There we go. Sorry, I had to blow in it like an old Nintendo cartridge. Jocelyn, what about you?
I am going to recommend it because, I think it's a good, I don't know if this is the director's first movie or one of her first movies, but I thought it was interesting enough and showed a lot of promise, and I'm looking forward to more from her. So I'm going to go with a B-.
B-. Sorry, the dog was making funny noises. I'm going to go with a C. I can't recommend it, and I think it's just too obtuse to really be enjoyable at this point. Okay, let's move on to our next movie, The Fight.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court, the Secretary's decision rested on a single assertion that don't do this tomorrow.
ACLU, good morning.
Hundreds of parents have just lost their kids.
Free our children now!
My job is to make sure the horror of what's going on stays front and center.
You can't be serious. The government can't ban people from accessing abortion.
This is the president's declaration of open season on trans people.
Transgenderism is a mental dysfunction.
It's all based on the census. Kind of difficult to imagine higher stakes.
It's just inconceivable.
We just keep fighting.
If I'm not going to be a civil rights lawyer right now, in this moment, when?
So this is a documentary about the ACLU, specifically lawsuits they've brought against the Trump administration and the various causes they fight for: LGBT rights, abortion access. What's the other one? Voting rights,
and separation of
family
families.
separation.
Right, family. So the kind of big four of terrible things that are happening now.
Yeah, seriously.
Anyway. Jocelyn, tell us about the movie and what you thought of it.
Yeah, sure. Really, I mean, you did a great job of just kind of explaining it right there. It's, the 4 major cases that you're seeing in the news, that are brought against the current administration. And as they said, this is like 4 out of hundreds that the ACLU is currently fighting. And I mean, these people are like freaking heroes. You see them like going through their day to day, just trying to fight for these people. And, it was incredible. Like they showed, people preparing the attorneys before speaking to the Supreme Court. Like these are major cases that they had access to the attorneys during like, history. And so I think to watch that play out is super incredible. And it's just heartbreaking and just, amazing, I think is the only way to describe it, is how I felt about it. As a documentary, I don't know. It was, I think that the format was a little strange because it kind of told it in sequential order, like it would go through the 4 different cases one at a time. I wish it had woven in the stories a little more and maybe told it less, like, okay, check this case, now the next one, now the next one, now the next one, and then the resolution of this case, the resolution of this case, the resolution of this case. I don't know if that makes sense. I wish that they had of veered away from that format a little. No,
I get what you're saying, because just to back that up, there's one case, the Jane Doe case, the abortion access case of an undocumented immigrant. They make a point to like anonymize her at the beginning, and then by the end of the story, they're telling her, kind of full story. They weren't even saying what state she was in at the beginning, so it's a little strange to see. Cody, what about you?
Well, I think that it is, like Jocelyn said, it's interesting from the perspective of, being like seeing footage of like historical things happening. And in that sense, it sort of reminded me a bit of a movie that I believe is a lot better than this one, which is Citizen 4, where you're sort of watching this like insane watershed moment of history, like happening as it's happening.
When the phone rings, that's the moment that I love in that movie.
Dude, that whole movie is so good.
Have you seen Citizen 4, Josh?
I haven't. I'm going to have to write it down.
It's about Edward Snowden.
Okay.
It's literally Edward Snowden blowing the whistle in real time.
It's crazy.
It's fucking awesome.
Is it Glenn Greenwald? The one he's with in that? He's talking about like them listening through the hotel phone, and like as he says it, like the phone rings. It's crazy. Anyway.
Yeah, it's and I think that's a better representation of like capturing, this moment in a bottle where you're seeing like, okay, this is a moment in time. This is something that is historical. This is something that is crazy. And it does a good job of kind of like showing what the arguments were like. Obviously they can't have the cameras in the Supreme Court, but you get audio recordings along with some animations that I think works pretty well. And I think that as the telling of the stories, it's a really great insight into the work that ACLU does. I think that it also does a decently okay job of highlighting the attorneys that it focuses on. Jerrod, you and I were talking about the older
the guy who's fighting the family separation case, right?
Yeah, and
he's fighting his USB cord.
There's a great scene of him just like looking completely lost at the notion of plugging his USB cord into a computer.
I thought he was having some sort of other crisis at that point, like he was breaking down from something, but he goes to borrow a phone charger from someone in the office, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna have to plug it into your computer because I don't have the dongle." And he's like, "How would I do that?" And she just tells him, and he just stands there like.
I think he was fighting the urge to be like, "Will you just do it for me?"
It was like a good 30 seconds. He stands there,
and then he went back and still plugged it in the wall.
It was just like having this.
He clearly didn't know.
Tiny meltdown for some reason.
Well, and I think it does a great job at implementing these moments of levity. Like I think there's a great scene of them all reading hate mail, which I really liked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a great scene of a guy fighting with dictation software, which I don't know if either of you have ever used dictation software.
No, but that it doesn't it say what does
Ben
it translate
Affleck?
to Ben Affleck?
Ben Affleck, yeah. And I think as footage, it's pretty good. As a documentary, it feels akin to like something you'd see on PBS, and like maybe like a step above like a puff piece. Like it's like It's like one tier above what I would consider a puff piece. I'm going to get into something here that I think is a little bit complex, but there is a moment in the film where it sort of brings up the ACLU and talks about how, in addition to fighting for all of these amazing things that nobody else is fighting for, the ACLU does not discriminate against who they're fighting rights for. So they show that, the ACLU will defend clients who are trying to express their, Nazi opinions. And then it kind of shows that the ACLU were sort of responsible for allowing the Charlottesville protests to happen.
Well, I think the point is that it's open to interpretation what you believe is amazing, and that's the whole point of freedom of speech, is that it's not up to you to decide.
Well,
which I think they did a good job of explaining, as far as like, listen, us fighting for, these quote unquote amazing issues are just your perspective of what that amazing means, and that's why we have to fight for it for everyone, not just when it aligns with your own opinions.
Right. No, I understand that, but yeah. the problem is that, first and foremost, I think the director deserves some credit for addressing it at all, right? Because they
could have just because they introduced it in the intro.
Yeah. They could have left this on the table and just focused on the good. The issue becomes where I think the moral and ethical part of that piece is a bigger issue than maybe the film chooses to focus on, because they show some piece of dissent between the guy in charge of the ACLU, and I think the other guy was like second in command or something like that, right? So the guy who's second in the command kind of talks about how much he disagrees with representing people in Charlottesville and allowing those protests to happen. So I think that the ethical and moral dilemma here is more, it deserves more focus than the 5 minutes it got.
I completely agree. That was a big takeaway for me as well, is that they kind of touch on it, but they don't even ask, the four attorneys that they're following their opinion on that.
Right. You see shots of them kind of I don't think that it was actually this happening. I think it was edited footage, right. But you see Charlottesville stuff happening, and then all your attorneys looking at their phones, really upset. I don't think that was actually at the Charlottesville incident, but and so the thing becomes, again, I really do applaud them for bringing it up at all. But if you open that box, you really got to give the proper attention to it.
And not only that, but it would have been fascinating to explore more.
Right.
I think.
Well,
it would have given it a much more balanced kind of feel.
That's kind of been the classic argument against the ACLU, if you've ever heard it from old people before, is that they'll defend someone's right to, burn down the ACLU or whatever, to express their opinion. I do think that there is a moral crossroads. Then I don't know that they chose the right path for the kind of spirit of the organization. I get that this is in the letter of the law to them to defend free speech and to align themselves with people seeking to simply express their constitutionally guaranteed rights and privileges. However, I don't think that they're off the hook for this, because this turned into a deadly. They show in graphic detail the footage of I can't remember the shithead's name, who runs into the crowd, kills Heather Heyer, who was a protester, an anti whatever you want to call these white supremacists, protester. Ended up dying and there are people that I think have a great argument to say the ACLU has her blood on their hands, because they fought for this permit for this group to assemble. And I get it that it's in their their kind of creed to secure these rights for people, but it's it feels like something they could have left alone.
They did. I totally agree. I think that just because you fought for the permit, just to play, I guess, devil's advocate, that they fought for the person to have the right for free speech, not for the person to have the right to kill someone or
exactly. I mean, 100%. I don't want to correlate those two because
right.
That's not what I'm doing. It's though that this was
But they didn't have these interesting conversations in the documentary.
Right. Exactly. Like this is something that's. I mean, there's probably no right answer for them.
They
and
kind
I think
of glazed over it really quickly.
They were like, "Yeah, we argued about it. And
exactly.
I respect the decision, but I don't agree with it." Like, well,
it was this really sad and I mean, it's unfortunate.
It's a huge flashpoint for all this shit, and the fact that it just kind of sweeps it aside is a little less satisfying than it should be.
Well, and I think that it could have greatly benefited by talking to people within the ACLU about how they handle situations where they like vehemently disagree with the way in which they take certain cases for people who are spewing hate speech, but yet they're defending their right to do so.
Right, like because the Westboro Baptist Church.
Right.
Yeah, that would have been a good one too.
Because again, there are obviously people who are working these cases. So why aren't we hearing from the people who are working the cases in which they have to make these moral and ethical decisions on what they're doing? And
even just one out of the four.
And
that would have been cool.
And I think it does have a bit of a narrow mindset in that too, ironically, because you see the trans the issue about trans people serving in the military is handled by a trans lawyer, who obviously has a personal connection to that, but which is completely and totally mentioned in the story. To in the fairness of the movie, it's mentioned that this is he's the one trans person in that office handling the case. But yeah, you don't see kind of dissenting opinion. You don't see the person who represented the Charlottesville protesters or the Westboro Baptist Church, who may have disagreed with it, but still is fundamentally bound to serve these people by their commitment to the ACLU's mission. And I think that is a missed opportunity. I think it does turn into sort of a puff piece, like Cody was saying. Ignoring those things.
Well, and I think the moment that you bring it up, you're opening Pandora's box, and if you're going to open that up, you really have to fully give it the attention it deserves. And again, like I said, I think it's a bigger issue than it's made out to be in the movie. And I think, and again, it would be one thing for us to have this knowledge and complain that the movie doesn't touch on it and it's a puff piece. This movie very deliberately brings it up. So if you're going to bring it to the table, you've really got to explore it in a way that it deserves. And I don't think that it does that. And as a result, it does feel a bit puff piecey because of that.
And another thing I wanted to add, if you followed the news at all, these stories, and that's the thing I think kind of lends it to being more of a puff piece. Also, is that this isn't really bringing anything new to the table, unfortunately. And I don't know that they're really
behind the scenes was kind of cool though. I mean, seeing a guy prepared to speak before the Supreme Court, I was just like, oh my God, I can't imagine.
Right. And I mean, I think the probably the most interesting one is the Brett Kavanaugh abortion rights connection. I think that's probably has the most interesting backstory to it. The other ones are just kind of, it's all stuff that's been played out in the. I do love that the census one. The lawyer initially thinks they lost, and then he's reading through the judgment or the decision, and he's like, "Oh wait, shit, we won," and that was interesting to see, like him.
Yeah, they got some good moments. They captured some incredible moments.
If you've ever, Jocelyn, you've probably done this, but if you've ever tried to read court documents to figure out what the hell is happening, they are dense and weird, and you have to figure out what are they talking about.
I sat in on Sonia Sotomayor's confirmation hearings in DC. That was
really?
It was so incredible, and that was just her taking questions from the senators.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I'm such a geek about all that. So.
But if you read a decision that comes down, and you're like, what am I trying to read?
Oh here? Yeah.
That's why you need SCOTUS blog.
It's all the double negatives and
Yeah, and then like all the legal language and the prayer and all that stuff that is just written into it. Also, one last thing to add: weird that a documentary about the ACLU had all the curse words bleeped.
I think it was to keep the rating.
Yeah, I know, but it still just seems a little
freedom of speech, bro.
Yeah. Anyway, grades, Jocelyn.
Yeah, I think everything we just said, and I'm still going to recommend it. I think it could have been a little more like bringing in some of the opposing ideas to make it more impactful when you do have those victories. I'm going with a B.
A B. All right, Cody, what about you?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of great footage in here, and I think that it's possibly a better collection of footage than it is an all-around film. That said, I think it's good enough to where, I mean, look, the footage is powerful, it's meaningful. There are great moments like seeing someone literally win a Supreme Court argument in real time. You know, that stuff is great. That being said, it is a little light, and it does skirt around what I believe to be a pretty major issue. So I give it a B-.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you, Cody. It is a little light and a little puffy. I do think it's worth watching. I don't think you're going to find anything really revelatory about the content it brings, just the idea of what they captured. Like you mentioned, the guy winning the Supreme Court case, and then sort of the nuts and bolts lead up to Brett Kavanaugh getting the Supreme Court nomination and ultimately being appointed. But yeah, B- for me too. All right, let's move on to our last movie, Summerland.
We were expecting you an hour ago. Sorry. Frank? This is Miss Lamb, your new guardian. I don't want him. We've all got to do our bit.
I'm supposed to go to school.
Go on, then.
Where is it?
This is Frank. He's an evacuee from London. Miss Lamb, I know you're busy writing your stories.
Academic theses.
They don't look very interesting.
I wrote them. Do you believe in heaven?
Yes.
Well, you shouldn't. What happened to all the people who died before the Christians? Where did their souls go? Summerland.
Where's Summerland?
It's a myth.
Stories have to come from somewhere.
Oi!
It's my dad's. In 21 Squadron.
Well then, what are you waiting for?
So this is a film starring Gemma Arterton, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, and some English folks. I don't remember their name. Tom Courtney. Anyway, it's sold as a drama, but I think it's a little funnier than that at times, and lighter. Cody, tell us about Summerland and what you thought of it.
Well, it's super British. That's one thing. From the get-go. So yeah, I mean, essentially you saw some of it there in that clip and trailer, but it's about a woman who is sort of a very standoffish, typical loner spinster who is
Jesus.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what it is, right?
Well, I mean, they call her, yeah. You learn later that she's just kind of heartbroken. But anyway, go ahead, Cody.
This loner spinster.
They call her a witch. The kids call her a witch.
Yeah.
Oh, she does mention the cat.
She doesn't have a cat.
Yeah, that's right.
A cat lady in by name only, or so basically, she is lives on her own, and she's a child is brought to her door that she is responsible for watching while his father is in war. Not really understanding where the mother is.
It's essentially the idea is that these children were evacuated from London during the bombing during World War II, and so they're safe while the parents are either serving. The mother's supposed to be serving in some ministry, and the father's obviously deployed, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and so it's kind of your typical person who is unfit to be a parent, or unwilling to be a parent, forced into a situation where they must take on a parental role and take care of the child. And look, it's a bit of a generic movie. I think that there are some certain things that are kind of ridiculous and telegraphed that happen throughout the movie. I think that the best part of the movie is Gemma Arterton, who is, I think, really great. in this role. And it's a really good performance where she's able to kind of like, I mean, at the beginning, she's a very convincing grump. I mean, she does some like, she does some super mean things, and I like its commitment to that idea. And then over time, of course, she kind of softens to the idea of having this child, and then, you know, certain things again become revealed, and it's also sort of told alongside this love story of where you kind of see how she got where she is by telling this love story, which ultimately is like a same-sex love story where she was in love with a woman, and the woman wanted to have a family, and it just kind of didn't pan out. And I feel like the movie doesn't really connect those two stories as well as I wish that it did. I feel like at times it's telling two different stories that sort of like tiny, like it tiny, like in a tiny bit coalesces towards the end. Like
a tiny bit? I don't think a tiny bit.
Well, I'm okay. I should say this. It coalesces in a big way, but it's a tiny part of the movie, if that makes sense. Like it's ultimately at the end of the day, it coalesces in the last like 10 minutes of the movie. And I just feel like for too long, these stories feel, too separated and too separate. And I, yes, it does eventually make the connection in a very, in my opinion, ridiculous way. But, again, I just felt like it was the battle of two different stories for too long of the time. I think it's a great performance, and it's ultimately, I think it's a really tender movie at times. And I think that piece of it makes it easier to overcome some of the familiarity that you might feel watching it, because I don't think it's anything that's never been done before. It feels really familiar, but I think the performances, and it's got a certain sweetness to it that, at the end of the day, I think that wins out over any issues I have with, the generic story or its storytelling being a little bit, separated for me.
Jocelyn, what about you?
I think for me, more than ridiculous, I think it was sort of, it seemed to be a coincidence for a large part of the movie. The sort of the reality that brought these characters together, and I thought that was ridiculous. And then they kind of, I think, tie that up in the end and explain how this really wasn't a coincidental, situation. And so then it was kind of like, well, that's still a little unrealistic that they were somehow able to coordinate this agreement, if that makes sense, without giving too much away. For me, it felt like that episode of Black Mirror, the San Junipero episode, but as a drama. Like, there was a lot of sort of similarities for me, and the relationship and the love story. So, and of course, because it's British, I think they were kind of
that's really it. Yeah.
It's like San Junipero if it was a
well, it also shares
drama.
It also shares an actress too.
Oh, that's right. Yes, thank you. That's probably why. That's a large part of it. It's kind of like how I just realized in Money Plane that was what's his face, literally today.
Wait, what?
Thomas Jane.
Money Plane.
Okay.
Thank God you have that.
Yeah.
I just realized Thomas Jane was in Money Plane.
Money Plane.
Sorry, it had to happen again.
Yeah, I'm glad I remembered to say it, and you were able to use your little
thing.
You.
I think I didn't use it last week at all. So.
No, you didn't.
No, we forgot. So.
And also, did you remove Funky Butt Lovin'?
Oh, well, it just doesn't fit.
I think you deleted it.
It
fits into everything. What are you talking about?
Not on purpose, Cody. I'm sorry. I'll add it back. Don't worry.
Thank you.
So,
sorry, go ahead. Go on.
No,
go ahead, Jocelyn.
I think the last point I wanted to make, just that what Cody was saying as far as like, yeah, we've seen this before as far as like the unlikely parent kind of scenario is very true. Like this is, we've seen that often over and over, but I think what makes it better is the lead actress and also the children actors. I thought that the relationship was nice. So all in all, I mean, there was some really great parts and some parts that maybe weren't very realistic.
Yeah, I do agree with Cody that it is very British, and I think that it kind of really manifests itself in the fact that it's pretty light. in certain spots. Like it's billed as a drama, and it obviously has some dramatic tension with, you know, it being during the war and all this other, you know, the things that are happening to the characters that are off screen. I do think it's probably a little more whimsical than it should be at times, because the whole thing with Summerland is about basically seeing mirages of
floating islands.
Right, floating islands that I don't know that the movie ever quite gets to in a real way.
Right.
You know, it uses it as more of a metaphor for something else. And it's fine, but it just doesn't really seem to ever coalesce into anything. You know, the coincidence that brings the two storylines together is something that I could have lived without, because I think it would be more powerful if it was just this kind of heartbroken woman essentially learning to open herself up to someone else in a way, as opposed to it being this convenient, you know, tying parts of her life together in a convenient bow. So I feel like the movie does itself a bit of a disservice doing that, because I think it would have been a better story had that happened. It kind of reminds me of, have either of you seen or read About a Boy?
Oh, yeah.
You know, just sort of
the Hugh Grant movie.
Right. This character that becomes sort of a surrogate father to this kid who needs it.
Or Big Daddy.
Big Daddy, yeah. It's the British Big Daddy.
The British Big Daddy.
It's the British Big Daddy.
I mean, About a Boy is British in itself, but yeah, it's just this sort of like reluctant parent that doesn't necessarily exude the qualities you would see in a parent. You know, they're standoffish or selfish or whatever, and I think that's would have been a better payoff to that story had the connection between the characters not been so convenient. Mm-hmm. And I don't hate it. I don't hate the connection. I don't hate what happens. It just feels a little pat to me.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it sort of feels like, you know how sometimes you watch these movies where you can see that they are very clearly designed to like tug at your heartstrings, and so it's I think like manipulative. I think it's a tad bit manipulative.
A little bit, yeah, and it does try to explain away its coincidence in a way that I don't know is entirely successful.
Look, I wrote in my notes the twist. Oh, come on, is what I wrote.
I don't think it's that bad, but it does. It doesn't necessarily. It's like a payoff of a country music song, you know, where it's like just.
That's a perfect analogy.
Where it's just sort of.
Where it's like so cute and quaint.
Yeah, like it's not bad,
and simple.
But it's
like very simple.
It's so syrupy and sweet that it just is sort of like.
I love that analogy. That's great.
You just said, come on. And I said, I wrote, come on. And that's what you just said. That's not fair.
You're right. I shouldn't have said, come on. Anyway, grades, Cody.
Look, despite all of this stuff, I think it's still a pretty sweet movie. And I found myself
Weeping?
I would say I was lightly bawling.
No, you had a wine glass in your hand and it's tearing.
Yeah, that's basically how it went. No, I was won over by its charm. Again, Gemma Arterton is really fantastic in here, and I think kind of carries the whole thing. And so I give it a B-. It's fine.
B-. All right, Jocelyn, what about you?
Yeah, I think after you mentioned the whimsical elements too, I really didn't like that part of it. I thought that was really unnecessary and kind of cheesy. But the rest, it wasn't bad. I don't know if I would recommend it though. I'm gonna go with a C.
Wow, that's harsh. I'm gonna go with a B-, just like Cody. I think it ultimately kind of won me over with its sweetness, and even though the twist, if you want to call it a twist, is a little too too easy, I guess. It's still fine. It doesn't pull anything out from under the movie at all. Going, what came before it, I think it would have been served better, carried out another way, but it's still fine.
Y'all are both saps.
I know.
I had no idea. Y'all are such saps.
And you're an ice queen.
Yeah. And you're just cutting them at the knees.
C.
Like Gemma Arterton.
Okay, C+.
All right, that's going to do it for this week. Next week, Cody, that's loaded next week.
Packed show next week. So first we have our first HBO Max movie that we're covering, which is An American Pickle.
Yeah, the Seth Rogen one.
The Seth Rogen movie.
I'm so excited.
About being pickled for generations. We also have a movie I saw during South by Southwest that never came out that I actually liked quite a bit, and I'm interested to see what you guys think. It's called I Used to Go Here. It's Gillian Jacobs is the star, and it's got some like really good like comedy cast in there. There's an Amazon movie that got a lot of buzz called Boys in the Wood. That also comes out, and that is Boys with a Z. And then I think it's a coin flip on the fourth movie between the Tax Collector, which is the Shia LaBeouf David Ayer movie, which I have heard some not so great things about so far. And then there's a small indie comedy called Spinster with Chelsea Peretti that I also have a screener of. That we'll see what happens, but.
I would just probably like to cast my vote now for the Shia LaBeouf David Ayer movie, but that's just me.
I mean, I have heard very bad things.
I mean, I'm that's the whole reason behind
Money Plane.
Not to say, is it Money Plane bad?
Well, I mean, this is the movie that famously Shia LaBeouf got like a full chest tattoo for. Right. So, yeah.
I'm still waiting to hear why it's bad.
I mean I don't know, but I had someone.
Great.
I had
because
someone
because David Ayer makes kind of bad movies.
Yes, and I have someone who we may know who may have given it a D. So it's apparently quite awful. And I also heard saw some rumblings on Twitter that David Ayer is sort of making Hispanics look bad.
Oh no!
So
okay,
worse than he did in Suicide Squad with.
Well, I think someone said David Ayer is now showing a pattern of making Hispanics look really bad. So,
good Lord, did you ever see Suicide Squad, Jocelyn?
I didn't. No, I went straight to Birds of Prey.
Much better choice, but Suicide Squad has like the worst written like Mexican character ever. Like that scene where where like he's talking to his wife or whatever is happening. Do you remember that one, Cody? Where it's like just a bunch of like they might as well just be eating like tacos and stuff. As stereotypical as it is, it's so terrible. All right, if you want to reach us, you can email us at podcast@cinesnob.net. Find us on Twitter at CineSnob. You saw our Twitter handles pop up throughout the show, so you can find us there. Also, find us on Facebook at CineSnob Critic. You can listen to Cody and I on two other podcasts, Re-MCU, Rewatching the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Core and Stream. Our latest episode with second half with Jordan Olds is out right now. We got another one in the pipe coming up here. We're going to be talking to another person here this coming week, right, Cody?
Yeah, we're talking to Austin comedian Chris Cubas this week, who... well-known Austin guy, was on At Midnight many times.
We had a really hard time picking movies for him to watch because he watches everything.
Nice.
Yeah. Like he's been spending quarantine like blogging what he's been watching on his Twitter feed, and it's like hundreds of movies.
Like I was picking something for him to choose from, and I went to like this really obscure action movie that I knew about, and he was like, nope, seen it. So anyway, what else, Cody?
I have a podcast with Jerry Roach and Eddie Pence, comedians, called The Ramble, every Tuesdays, Wednesday, and Friday. And also, if you are listening to this and want to see our faces, we have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to, where you can watch all of our video podcasts, as well as Sunday nights at 8 or 8:30, I forget what time, we're going to be streaming the show on Twitch.
Yes, very cool. I don't know. I was trying to watch Twitch on my Roku, and apparently it doesn't work anymore. So,
well, at least it's not TikTok.
I'm old. Yeah.
Don't get into TikTok.
Yeah,
it's gonna go away.
All of my followers are gone.
Yeah. All right.
That's not why, though.
Anything else before we go?
My content is great. Jocelyn, I am controversial, but you know.
Jocelyn, Jocelyn, how's your dog?
He's great. Yeah, that's why you should tune into the YouTube, because I've got this adorable.
I can hear him skittering around.
I think he starts realizing when it's over.
He's like, "Oh, they're rapping. Let's go."
Yep. He understands English, I swear.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did he speak it when you met him?
Yes, he does. He speaks, but we don't want him to be taken away by the government, so we try to keep that on the down low.
Oh, okay.
Is
he learning French from your husband?
He does know French too. Yeah, you're gonna ask that.
What is it? So what is
bilingual?
Is there like different you ever heard like the onomatopoeia for how like an animal makes its noises is different in different languages?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like the rooster, I think, is a big one because in Spanish it's totally different than cock-a-doodle-doo,
yeah.
And it's more similar to that in French.
But what does a dog bark?
I think they bark.
Oh.
But there are some weird
That's boring.
ones. I'll have to research offline and
let's
send
bring
to
it
you
to the
guys.
next show.
We will, that's the content that people want.
All right. Anything else? Anyone?
No.
All right. On that note, I'm Jerrod Kingery.
I'm Cody Villafana.
And I'm Jocelyn and Jerrod.
Thank you for listening to the CineSnob Podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit CineSnob.net. See you next week.